Thank you. We are going to start, before we start our scheduled meeting, we have a public hearing on the proposed amendment to the downtown TIF district and creation of a new TIF district. I see our city manager headed to the podium to let us know what's going on.
State law requires the city, towns that entertain the idea of creating a TIF to hold a public hearing before any vote is taken. So that's the purpose for tonight's hearing on two TIFs, because with the proposal in front of you tonight, it involves amending an existing TIF, the downtown TIF, to remove two buildings from that existing TIF. And the second TIF proposal is to create a new TIF for those two buildings. So as I said, it's a requirement of state law that the community hold a public hearing. Of course, during the discussion on the articles themselves on the warrant, on the agenda, there'll be opportunity for public comment and questions. But certainly if any member of the public has a question now regarding either TIF proposal, now's the time to get up and speak. Or if I can answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Is there any other business or members of the community, local, across the nation that have applied to do anything with that business other than the people that have already applied for that TIF?
You're speaking of the two buildings right across the street?
No.
Okay.
As far as I know.
These are the only applicants for that TIF?
Correct.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Yes.
I'm still trying to learn about TIFs. It's my understanding that the downtown TIF, that money, the tax money collected in the downtown TIF, can only be used for projects in the downtown. This building has its own TIF. The nail building has a TIF.
No.
No.
No, they don't.
This building,
Okay.
this building has its own TIF.
Okay.
The Hathaway building has its own TIF.
So these buildings that are coming out of the downtown TIF,
Right?
where can their tax money be used?
Now, TIF money can be spent outside of the district as long as, and the critical thing is for economic development related purposes. The whole reason behind the creation of TIFs over 20 years ago was to spur economic development. So you can use TIF money created in one district for outside activities, providing especially that they're economic development related.
But Sandy, I want to answer and expand on that because I appreciate this. This is the most important question of the night right here. We actually use some of our TIF dollars to pay for some of Mike's salary. We can use it on police and fire even. What we have to do is try to determine the percentage of the amount of time like Mike might be spending on economic development or on the downtown revitalization. And so we actually can direct those dollars to some of our core functions and expenses. The reason this particular TIF was being, and the reason the city would ask for this TIF, for these buildings to be taken out of the downtown TIF and to create their own small district, is because when they were assessed as part of the downtown TIF, they were actually assessed at a higher value than those buildings are worth today. And so in order for even the city to get any financial gain from that, we would have to crawl out of that hole because the tax increment financing only kicks in when the value goes above and beyond what that property was assessed at when the TIF district was created. And so if it's worth $600,000 or $700,000 less today than when that TIF district was created, these good folks who are investing in those properties are going to have to, that first $700,000 they invest is no benefit to them. It's no benefit to the city. We have to crawl out of that hole. And so what we want to do is pull them out and have them assessed at their current value, which is that much less. So there's an immediate benefit to the city upon approving that TIF. And we can spend that money on various things. We just have to go through a lot of hoops to make sure that when the state comes to us, we can say with a straight face, you know what, we've looked at that, police have X amount of calls downtown. So we can offset their budget with X amount of dollars from that.
If you have a pothole up the roadaways, the tax money paid from this building cannot be used to fix that pothole. It can only be used to fix pothole in front of this building, is that?
Well, what we try to expend all of our TIF funds every year. So I guess it's a matter of shifting pieces on the same map, I guess. So instead of using the tax dollars from that building to fix that pothole up the street, we're using those tax dollars to spend on Mike's part of Mike's salary. So that part that we were spending before that on Mike's salary, now that's going to fill that pothole. It's a net. I mean, it doesn't take away from funds we're spending on those critical functions. And actually, one of the things we've been working on hard over the last couple of years is making sure we find appropriate ways to spend that money to offset our city budget rather than create new projects just to spend the money on.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mike Roy. Currently, Mike, the TIF program is basically the Hathaway and Main Street, or does like the Elm Plaza fall into a TIF if they wanted to? In other words, if Kmart, we had a potential buyer, they went through the Rosenthals, could they set up a TIF?
Well, I think we have a total of 8 TIFs. So I have one for Huhtamaki, one for Hathaway, one for the downtown, and one for the airport. I'm forgetting the other 2, but we have 7 or 8 of them. So covering a lot of different places. Used to have one for Elm Plaza, that expired. Used to have one for Mid-State Machine, that expired. Yep.
So it's not just one area?
No.
Just focus on that.
And so everyone's aware, we have a TIF committee that is a very diverse group of people who are very financially savvy, understand kind of the process. However, because we are in a time of economic revitalization that we haven't really had to approach like we have in the past, Councilor Thomas has actually approached that committee and asked that they be charged with the task of meeting on a more regular basis to determine a larger strategy for how we use our TIFs. Because let's face it, look, in the last 20 years, there hasn't been, every project that came up was critical. Every project that came up was the only project. That's not the case anymore. And so we are trying to direct that committee to be a little bit more strategic and create an overall plan. I will say we aren't even close to our maximum capacity for what we could have for TIF projects. And that committee's sole purpose is to determine whether or not it is of benefit to the city of Waterville as a whole. And so when that committee says, yes, we approve this project, what that committee is saying to the people of Waterville is, who is that? It is like the Twilight Zone in here a lot of nights. I totally get it.
Very fitting.
Yes, very fitting. But that committee, they are tasked with the job of saying, do we believe this is critically important enough to the people of Waterville? They are charged with that task, and I can promise you the members of that committee do not take it lightly at all. They are not here to give away anything. They are here to say, is this critical and of benefit to the larger majority of the people of Waterville? And I will say, as the mayor of the city of Waterville, when that committee says yes, I have my full faith and confidence in their decision on that. Yes.
And I just want to say the city does have the TIF policy, which I assume is on the city's website somewhere, Mike. The TIF, and so that outlines the criteria that make you eligible to apply for a TIF. One of the important criteria is you have to add at least $500,000 worth of value to, whatever project you're working on. And that's so that we, obviously there needs to be some sort of a limit to who can apply for these things. And now, TIFs are one of the most misunderstood and underused parts of municipal government. Certainly Waterville over the years has not taken full advantage of what we can do with TIFs. It's really the one tool the state has given us to maximize the value of the taxable property that we have. And there's two parts to a TIF. I mean, there's protecting the value for the city itself, and then there's a credit enhancement agreement, which is where we give some of those taxable dollars back to the developer to offset the cost of their project. And we look to make sure it's a win for the city. In this case, even though we're talking about giving a credit enhancement agreement to the developer, we'll still be collecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 times as many tax dollars from those properties as we do right now, even with the tax break. And then, when the credit enhancement agreement expires, we'll be collecting 10 times as much tax dollars as we're collecting right now. And it becomes even more important if revenue sharing is to increase, because, we would lose by not putting that taxable value in a TIF district. We lose money to the state when it comes to our education subsidy. We would pay more taxes to the county. So it really can be a very important and useful tool for the city if we do it the right way.
Mike, is there anything else, any other continuance of the public hearing? Is there any other questions or comments from the public? Yep, Mr.
So
Fagan.
I'll be quick.
Sure.
So I think 7 out of every 8 businesses that start go bankrupt. When a business comes in and takes this undertaking and you're saying the long term and eventually you recoup your money, what happens if it go bankrupt by 3 years? How does that affect the TIF and the refund to the taxpayers?
It actually doesn't affect us at all. The risk is completely on the developer. They're the ones who are going to invest money and lose money. The city is not investing any money in this. The city is not losing any money on this. It's kind of a risk-free deal for the city. We have everything to gain. We have literally nothing to lose.
And the TIF is connected to the real estate, not any particular business that's in the
Right.
building.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I will call that to a close. I think we're good to move right on, if everyone's okay. We are moving on to our regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. If anybody would like an agenda, if you haven't already gotten one or would like one, I think they are located right outside the back door. And as we come up on the beginning here, I have a proclamation I'd like to read, and I believe, what? Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Sydney Mayhew will stand and lead us in the pledge.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's what happens when we have public meetings at 7. So I believe Larry Dodge, head of patron services, and Liz Davis from our children's librarian are here. If you could come on up, I'm going to bring my microphone right around. And thank you so much for coming up here. This is a mayoral proclamation for Waterville Public Library Love Day. Whereas the love of libraries in Waterville, Maine dates back to a time of municipal incorporation. And whereas the Waterville Public Library has been continuous operation since 1896 and has been an anchor for Waterville's downtown since opening its Carnegie Building in 1905. And whereas the Waterville Public Library is a welcoming, safe place for every citizen at every age and stage of life. And whereas the Waterville Public Library offers free access to knowledge, information, and learning opportunities, allowing each citizen, if she or he chooses, to acquire the skills, knowledge, and inspiration to live a happier, healthier, and more prosperous life. And whereas the Waterville Public Library Residents and card holders have access to more than 6 million items in a variety of formats, and citizens connect with opportunities to participate in diverse, creative programming ranging from job fairs to art shows to story times, which my kids enjoy thoroughly, so thank you. And whereas the Waterville Public Library is an important public space in our city, providing all citizens with beautiful, uplifting space in which to learn, be inspired, and connect with other people. And whereas the Waterville Public Library is a well-used municipal resource, circulating more than 11 million items since its opening more than a century ago. And whereas the Waterville Public Library was awarded the 2017 National Medal for Museum and Library Service, our nation's highest achievement of libraries and museums, honoring the excellence and innovation and service to communities. And whereas it is appropriate that the City of Waterville recognize the value of the service that the Waterville Public Library provides to our community and beyond, free and open to all. Now therefore I, Nick Isgro, Mayor of Waterville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby declare that the date of April 26 annually from this year forward will be known as the Waterville Public Library Love Day, and in recognition thereof, I do urge all of our city's residents and visitors to fully enjoy and avail themselves to the many resources and opportunities offered by our public library and opportunities here in the heart of our city. And I'd ask for a round of applause for these wonderfully dedicated employees of the Waterville Public Library. Thank you so much. Yes. Okay, first we have the disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there any counselor who feels they have a conflict of interest with any of the votes they will take tonight? No. We will move on to unfinished business, or the approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Now, unfinished business order 61, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
Approval of forfeiture.
Move to adopt.
And second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Actually, that's an order. I think I need a roll call. Pardon me.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor White? Oh, sorry.
He doesn't live here anymore.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm sure he'd be in
Counselor
favor.
Bofia?
Yes.
Counselor Smith? Yes. Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor
Yes.
Coelho?
Yes.
Counselor Tate?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Great. Moving on to ordinance 62, 2019.
Amendment to plastic bag ordinance, be it enacted by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers as follows. That the effective date of the plastic bag ban ordinance be changed from April 22nd, 2019 to September 1st, 2019.
Move to adopt.
And second.
Is there any discussion? None from the council, any from the public? I will ask for, oh, we have somebody coming into the podium.
Mike, I just want to be clear, there is an ongoing legal challenge to the vote, and this voting tonight doesn't change. It still allows that process to move forward, correct?
That's correct.
My question was for Counselor Thomas. You weren't here for the last meeting, but at the first meeting for the adoption of the numbers, you had discussed modifying the ordinance to possibly allow for a fee per bag, and I didn't know if what we were doing here excluded that process. If I just wanted to
No.
ask the council if they'd have a brief discussion about that.
To be clear, we can always amend an ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where does that stand as we? I've had a lot of people ask me,
I think there are still ongoing discussions about that.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And one other thing I should bring to your attention with the numbers, there were 68 of the votes tallied here that were noted by the Supreme Judicial Court as not to be counted. They were added back into the numbers. I've had several discussions. We're concerned about the legal bills here for the town, but what you have is, in effect, 68 individuals whose names were added back into the voter registration rolls with no input from the voter. These were individuals that did not attend the hearing to update their information, but in effect, they let that lapse by not attending those hearings. And at that point, Patty, in conjunction with the administration of Colby, added their names back into the voter rolls and added their names back into the voter totals. I don't know the consequences of that for the city if one of those students or voters were to object that they did not want to have their names added back in for tax consequences. I'm just pointing this out to the council.
Mark, here's what I'll say to that.
Yeah.
You're right. Those votes shouldn't have been counted because they had no input from the voter. They do not change the outcome of the election. That needs to be clear. They do not change the fact of whether that bag ordinance went. However,
Yes.
I agree with you that we better start talking right now about how votes are counted in the city, because we have votes being counted that shouldn't be. So thank you for bringing that up.
And
It's
that
an
was my
important and
point.
cogent
Yes.
point. Thank you. Is there any other discussion on Ordinance 62, 2019? Could I get a roll call, please?
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Bofia?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Coelho?
Yes.
Counselor Tate?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. Moving on to new business, we have Resolution 64, 2019.
A referral to the planning board, be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers, that in accordance to Article 7, Section 7.1 of the zoning ordinance, a proposal to amend the zoning ordinance is hereby referred to the planning board for a public hearing and recommendation.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Mike, to be clear, this is simply to ask the planning board to take a look at this. This is not making any kind of decision tonight.
That is correct.
Because I understand there is some controversy surrounding this a little bit, or some questions, I should say, not controversy, some questions to be answered. This is merely asking that the planning board take a look at this and see if this is an appropriate change.
And to make a recommendation back to the council.
Correct.
And the council will ultimately have the final say. Even if the planning board recommends something, the council has the final say.
That is correct.
So there'll be a lot of open, okay. Thank you.
I just want to say, I mean, I've gotten a few phone calls about this, and I live right across the street from Golden Pond. I don't want to speak specifically to this issue, but this is something that's going to be coming in front of the council soon, which is to review the city's zoning. Because Silver Street, for example, is slowly turning from a residential street into a commercial street. And that we've done a lot of spot zoning on Silver Street. And I think it's important at some point to have a discussion about what we want that street to look like. And it's also important for the neighbors to know what the city's long-term vision is for that so that they can plan for their future. Are we going to let it just turn into a commercial route into downtown, or are we going to protect the residential character of that neighborhood? And I think we're going to see that situation in other places along KMD on the more residential side and on some of the other commercial corridors through the city. And I think it's been a long time since the city's taken a really comprehensive look at our zoning. As somebody who was on the planning board before and has dealt with these issues on the city council, we have done a lot of piecemeal zoning over the years, which is sort of goes against the whole point of having zoning. But in a lot of cases, there's been properties that otherwise wouldn't have been able to be used for something without, modifying the zoning. And we have a lot of issues with lots with the setback requirements that they actually really preclude anything from happening on those properties. And so a lot of times that's why we're modifying the zoning. So I think just be alert that this is a conversation that'll be, coming down the road in a couple of months, and it's going to be a really important conversation for the entire city.
Is there any other counselors or that have a question or comment on this referral to the planning board? Is there any members of the public that would like to question or comment on this referral to the planning board? Thank you. Could you come to the podium and just let us know who you are and where you live? Yeah.
So my name is Chris Coleman. I'm a resident of Wilson Park, actually an abutting property owner to Golden Pond. I really just think that this is, obviously not the night to decide on the ultimate fate of their proposed expansion. I understand that, but I just think this is a really terrible way to make policy. Like you said, this is spot zoning. This is classic ad hoc policy making. There is a process in place for this kind of illegal non-conforming use to continue and be allowed. It's called the variance process. We have tools that you're just not using, or the zoning board is not using, that are much more appropriate to this kind of a situation. I just want to lay out, there are unintended consequences when, rather than approve or disapprove or make any kind of specific decision on actual zoning, you're tinkering with the building blocks, the definition section of the zoning ordinances. So, let's say you do take financial services, put them into the definition of professional office, which is really what they're requesting. You're going to zone out financial services from service-oriented industries in the downtown. All of these banks that offer any kind of financial planning, any of those, technically, under the new rules as the proposal from the zoning board comes in, they could find themselves illegal, non-conforming use right here in the downtown commercial district. So, I just think that this, like you said, needs to be given a more comprehensive look. This kind of ad hoc policy making is going to lead to a lot of unintended consequences. And also, we did have this discussion in 2014 when the city's master plan was enacted, right? There is a pretty clear restriction on that property now. It's there for a reason, and nothing good can come of giving this back to the planning board to tinker with the very definitions of the zoning. If we want to have a comprehensive discussion about zoning in the city, there are better ways to do that. This is, by definition, ad hoc, and it's not going to lead to a coherent plan. I think that we really need to answer to all the people in the city who have applied for zoning variances in the past, because those variances, they offer substantial protection for the neighbors in the area. There's all kinds of things that they need to meet to show that the variance is appropriate. And we're doing an end run about that if you're redefining for the city. So, I'm just asking us to follow the laws of the city, follow the procedures that are in place, rather than this kind of total end run around the due process for our neighborhood. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your commentary, and I agree with the comments of Councilor Thomas and you as well about spot zoning and trying to conform to a larger strategic plan. I would say I don't think there's a difference in your neighborhood between allowing a CPA and financial services, but I understand that's not really what you're talking about. You're talking about this expanded plan that may or may not disrupt the residential nature of your neighborhood. I've gone through that myself in my own neighborhood. So I appreciate that, and I do hope that the council follows Councilor Thomas's lead when it comes to referring to the planning board a larger and broader discussion about what is the city's plans, because when people move into neighborhoods or into commercial sites, it's not fair to either party if they don't have an expectation of what is to be expected coming down the road. There has to be, for both the commercial side as well as the residential side, some kind of consistent policy that they can rely on when they're making an investment in either one of those places, and this constant movement around to spot zone this and spot zone that and spot zone this, does not do benefit to anybody. It creates constant controversy. I guess I'm speaking a little bit broader than the current situation that we're talking about here, but I really hope that people take this council puts the order on our planning board, because you're the ones that can do it, to get them working to figure this out, because we're going to keep running into this unless we figure it out. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Brian Bernacci. I'm the owner of both the building and Golden Pond. I just want to give a little bit of perspective, and I understand the situation that we're in now. The organization that was there before us had probably twice as many employees as we have now, had longer hours. Everybody's trying to figure out what the purpose was in making an exception to financial services. I'm a common sense type of person. I think it's pretty clear that we were trying to avoid high traffic, high volume, long hours, banks, credit unions with drive-throughs. We have shorter hours than they had. We're open from 8:30 to 5, only Monday through Friday. And even with the expansion, we'll have fewer employees and way fewer traffic than the previous occupants. So, we're living with something that was an oversight, and I just ask for your permission to go back to the planning board and fight it out. Thank you.
I do think in this particular case, the planning board is a place to have that discussion. It's going to allow for a much more robust discussion than we're having here. I would agree with that. Okay, we will take a vote. All in favor? Okay, unanimous. We will see you at the planning board. Mr. Roy, I believe that orders 65 and 66 have both been removed from tonight's agenda. Is that correct?
Right, so if you could make a motion to postpone until May 7th, hopefully both of those leases will be ready for your review.
So moved.
And second.
All in favor? Thank you very much. Order 67, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
And second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
What do you mean?
Fourth Amendment to Downtown TIF District and related development program.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, just open for discussion on the Fourth Amendment to the Downtown TIF. I want to be clear, this is not the approval of the new TIF. This is simply removing those buildings from the downtown TIF. Which I would say, I guess my comment, is there something that's going to cut me off here?
Well, I was going to just comment on the fact that it's the fourth time we've amended the downtown TIF. And the first time was to remove the Hathaway building from the downtown TIF and create its own.
Correct.
The second time was to, I believe, extend the term of the downtown TIF. Third time was when this building was removed from the downtown TIF and
Right.
separate.
Right, so this building was actually a parking lot before, so that made total sense. I would argue that it makes total sense to pass this particular amendment because of what I said before, when you're $700,000 in the hole, and the point is to benefit the city as a whole. And we have people who are working to put together a financial package to actually improve these properties and benefit the entire city. It doesn't make sense to start in a negative. So that would be my commentary on that.
And I would agree with you.
Mike, is there a cost to the city when we amend the downtown TIF? In this case, the developer did the work, right?
Yes, correct. We may only have minimal legal costs from our attorney to finalize the documents, but minimal.
Okay, I ask because there's a good chance when we start talking about Hedda Falls, for example, or we may be amending the downtown TIF again
A fifth time.
before too long, correct?
Right.
And then my other question, I guess, does it make sense to take these in this order, I guess? I mean, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if worst case scenario, what happens if we said, no, we're not going to give them a TIF?
We wouldn't go forward, of course, with the state in asking them to take the buildings out if we're not going to go forward with the next item.
Okay.
On the specific item of removing these two buildings from the downtown TIF, is there any other discussion from the council? Is there any questions or commentary from the public? We will take a vote. All in favor? That's unanimous.
And just to be clear on the process from here, is we send our requests to the State Department of Economic and Community Development. They must approve it before it becomes final. So it starts here, goes there, and then comes back to us approved, and we can go forward from there.
And Mike, just to be clear, are we working with the same people that we worked with? We had this, I mean,
Pretty much, yeah.
the same. So if people think this is political, we're really talking to the same people we were speaking to under the LePage administration, under the Mills administration. This is not a political type of position that we're dealing with here. These are people who are nonpartisan, who are really focused on helping the economic development of the state of Maine. Is that an
Fortunately.
accurate statement, roughly?
Yeah, you're correct,
Right.
which is very important.
Right. We're not dealing with commissioners here. We're dealing with employees.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Next will be Order 68, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
Designation of Municipal Development and Tax Increment Financing District 155 to 165 Main Street and adoption of related development plan.
Move to adopt.
And second.
Okay, we will open this. Would you like to come to the podium, Reagan, first and kind of give an overview of this? Whatever works for you.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Reagan LaRochelle. I'm with LaRochelle Consulting, and I'm here on behalf of Kennebec Realty Partners this evening to talk about their proposal that was put in front of the TIF committee earlier in March. Kennebec Realty Partners approached the TIF committee with a request for the creation of a TIF district and credit enhancement agreement for the 155-165 Main Street property, which they purchased in 2015. First, for the benefit of the public and the councilors, I wanted to describe this redevelopment in a little more detail. The two adjacent properties at this location, totaling 52,200 square feet on 4 levels, are in need of major renovation in order to be inhabitable. These buildings have been vacant for at least 10 years. There is need for capital investment, including roof, new windows, the installation of an elevator, and external facade repair, among other improvements. This will be a full historic renovation and restoration of these two buildings. Kennebec Realty Partners is going into this project wanting to create a place that everyone in town can enjoy. Instead of flooding the downtown with more retail space, perhaps contributing to the trend of vacant storefronts that we're seeing nationwide, Kennebec Realty Partners has a dynamic vision of what this space can become and how the development can contribute to Waterville as a whole. This is their vision. They're looking to create an 8-lane bowling alley, a restaurant, and a brew pub, along with outdoor patio space on the first floor across the street. They will also be the development of almost 12,000 square foot craft brewery and over 5,200 square feet of function space. 155 Main Street, which is the 2-story building, would house office space on its second floor, while the second and third floors of 165 Main Street would house market-rate apartments. Kennebec Realty Partners, LLC, consists of Thomas Dupre Sr., Thomas Dupre Jr., and Justin Dupre, who are all here this evening. They have been working and investing in Waterville for the past decade and have successfully renovated 4 homes close to the downtown. The Dupres plan to develop the individual businesses within this property. Therefore, they were able to provide some projections about what this redevelopment would mean job-wise. Excuse me. For job creation, while the development is taking place, they anticipate over 50 full-time jobs with pay ranging from $35,000 to $75,000 a year. in the job retention category, which are things that are in the TIF district application that the state likes to track. The job retention is estimated for 25 full-time jobs with ranges, again, ranging from 35,000 to 75,000. And these would be in the areas of executive, administrative, sales, service, maintenance, and production, and all on-site in downtown Waterville. This project is also bringing more foot traffic downtown, not only for people visiting the bowling alley and restaurant, but also the employees of the businesses and people living downtown and having office space there. Kennebec Realty Partners has had 2 meetings with the TIF committee, including a financial review of the project. The TIF committee was supportive of Kennebec Realty Partners' plans for redevelopment and voted it in favor to move to this council level. The combined property that makes up the proposed TIF district has an assessed value of $393,100 as of 2018. Kennebec Realty Partners currently pays just under $10,000 annually in taxes for these properties. And it does include 4 lots. There's a parking lot and a partial alley behind the buildings that is also going to be included in the TIF district that Kennebec Realty Partners owns. Kennebec Realty Partners is proposing an estimated $10.5 million investment that would result in a projected $5.5 million increase in property value. In order to make this project financially viable, they are requesting a credit enhancement agreement for 20 years that would reimburse 75% of new taxes generated annually. The city would retain the other 25% of the new taxes during this time. After the 20-year term, the city would retain 100% of the new taxes, still sheltered. The city plans to use that money for projects related to the downtown TIF district development plan. We hope that you will see that this redevelopment as an exciting addition to the continuing resurgence of this downtown and vote in favor of this project.
Thank you. And just to be clear, when you say reimburse 75% for 20 years on new tax revenues.
Correct.
That is above and beyond, that is not giving a discount to taxes they are already paying on the current value of those buildings.
Correct.
All right, thank you. I would just like to say that I'm somebody who in general is extremely skeptical of things like TIFs. However, in my time here as mayor of the city of Waterville, I have learned the fundamental importance, as Councilor Thomas has said, this is one of our only tools that we have to actually help shelter our revenues on different projects and to help put together pieces like this. Also, after working for 10 years in banking, I understand how projects like this are put together. Financially, nobody in their right mind is going to come in here with $10 million in cash and pump that into buildings that are never going to be worth that much. I'm extremely excited that we have people who are not only going to try to put that much money into buildings that are in our historic district that otherwise would probably end up having to be torn down several years from now, but are actually also working to not create empty storefronts for rental space, but actually want to put things in like a brewery and a bowling alley. I've worked with the Dupre family for the last couple of years. I know it has been top of mind for them to find a project that is going to serve all people from literally every socioeconomic level of the city of Waterville. There is nobody in the city of Waterville, no matter what social strata you come from, that isn't going to want to take their kids bowling on a weekend or go out for a beer in the local craft brewery on the weekend. That has been top of mind for them. It's very unique to this project. It's the first time I've seen something like this. I'm very appreciative, and I encourage the council to vote in favor of passing this TIF so we can harness the momentum we have in all the development currently going on and not squander it. Thank you.
I'm all set.
You're all set, Reagan. Thanks. Counselor.
Yeah, I'd like to second the mayor's response on this for Kennebec Realty Partners and the Dupree family, who have nothing but cultural roots and local interest in Waterville itself, and to have this family come that is well known in this area for their hard work on a number of things, to nonprofits, to real estate, to development. I have nothing but euphoria to say about this group and this family, because I really believe their intentions for this property are genuine all the way around. We often, as has been said here, as a council and Councilor Thomas and the mayor and several others, a lot of the speculation about tax increment financing is really uneducational. There's a lot of letters in the alphabet that seem to be a mixture of things that cause confusion with TIFs. And you do have to spend some amount of time in reading up on and being savvy on knowing what TIFs are really all about. But they are the most genuine tool that a municipality has to shelter tax revenue, from the county, and to use it for viable projects and economic development, and to, most importantly, allow businesses and entrepreneurs to come into the municipality and actually start from the roots and the foundation to build a business within a city that would be amicable to all different facets of the community. And definitely this project does that in all the sense of the word, from retail office space to banquet space, to brewery, to bowling, and I can't think of anything more important than bowling and beer.
Hear, hear.
It's certainly something that is, it speaks for the dynamic of the family itself. And again, this is what this is all about. This is what the TIF becomes such an excellent tool for. And economic development in concert with what's going on downtown. I mean, if legitimately we don't allow this to happen, the dust bales could be rolling down Main Street all over again, and we could have nothing but empty facades. And this is a very big hole that would be created if we chose not to go ahead with something like this, especially with people that have local roots in Waterville. To me, that's the tipping point. And they've already have a proven track record. And I have nothing but high praise for the Dupree family as I speak here. And I definitely encourage the council to really look inside yourselves and ask yourself, what else could you possibly think of for a better, wholesome family than this to go forward with? We did, as a committee, look at the bank financials concerning the credit enhancement contract. They spell out to the fact that 75% is the most adequate allotment for this project to go forward. I know there's been several conversations about maybe we can save money, maybe we can reduce it, but the fact of the matter is, this is the bottom line. This is literally the life and death of a potential project that could possibly bring years of enhancement to the city. We are going to be able to use this money in this TIF to very important purposes. And that's why, therefore, I honestly recommend that the council go forward with this TIF. Thank you.
What was the percentage for this building?
75.
So the TIF for this building?
Oh, for this?
For this building that we're sitting in?
And we got a pilot on this that confuses it as well.
Yeah, because I know they give us a little bit extra.
TIF for this building, in terms of the split, ended up being 60% city keeps, 40% is returned to the taxpayer.
However, this building's a little different because technically, all of the upper floors could have been tax exempt by state law.
Right.
However, we are getting a payment in lieu of taxes, even though it's partial on those. Yeah.
A better comparable might be the Hathaway, Mike. What was the CEA on the Hathaway building?
Well, when the Hathaway was approved over 10 years ago, the initial return in taxes was 75% for a period of 10 years.
Yeah.
After the 10th year, the return went down 1% per year for the next 15 years. So it went from 75% return to 74, 73, all the way down to finally 60% at the end, which we're not at the end yet. But, yeah.
But this one, when it ends, it goes to 100% full back to the city.
For us, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right, if we adopt it for 30 years, the remaining 10 is all city.
Right.
Really, we're leaving
Right.
another 1,000 on the table.
Somebody.
Yes, Councilor.
Okay, so a couple of questions here. What is the current downtown TIF CEA agreement for the entire downtown? Is there a number for that?
No.
There is no CEA on the downtown TIF. The city retains 100% of the money that goes into the downtown TIF.
Okay.
Correct, yeah.
All right. So as far as TIF goes, are there some negative effect that come from having a TIF value as far as like city value, or something that is something that happens with our subsidies and stuff like that?
Sure.
Well, we're going to,
Hang on. Can I answer that, Mike?
I'm sorry? Yeah,
Can I
go
answer?
ahead.
It actually is a net benefit typically to the city, because what?
So
I
there's,
think I remember a slide that you presented
There
to
it
us
is.
during a.
there it is.
Okay.
All right,
So if we're increasing the value of new properties by protecting it with a TIF, we are, actually, this is not protecting it.
No.
If values increase, we get a reduction in our state subsidy
Okay.
in education, and we pay more in county tax. If we shelter it with a TIF, our state subsidy for education stays high, our county tax stays low.
Okay. So, in my short education on TIFs, there's been a lot of reading. I read a lot of paperwork. So the first thing that I noticed is, yes, instituting a TIF, it has benefits. It does. It has benefits. But one of the downside that's usually not talked about is these things, right? So once the TIF runs out, this happens. Okay? So my point is, if you have a lot of these TIFs going around, once they come to maturity, what are the people who are going to be here and when we're not here anymore be left with, right? Because that value that is sheltered from the state, right, is going to hit our overall city value. And if we don't plan in advance as far as that increase in value, in 20 years from now, right, my daughter and your children are going to be left with a bunch of TIFs. They're going to mature and no money to account for that difference, right? So that's one of the things that I read about the TIF that I thought was very alarming. So it definitely calls for an overall strategy on how to manage our TIFs altogether so that we don't get in that situation when those TIFs mature. Because yes, the value is sheltered from the state, but that value is not sheltered for the entirety of the life of the TIF. It will only be sheltered for the years that the TIF, for the 30 years or the 20 years that the TIF is active.
That's correct, but you're trying to guesstimate what something's going to be worth 30 years from now. When we just did a property revaluation, the entire South End was literally worth the exact same amount it was 30 years ago. It hadn't increased in value. So no, there is no way to say what something's going to be worth when it hits the rolls in 30 years from now.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
You are correct that there needs to be ongoing strategy. However, that strategy needs to continue when every one of us up here is no longer sitting here, and every one of those members of the TIF committee, some of them are going to be dead by then. They need to be actually the ones planning for some of that. So you are correct. However, there's also sometimes where, do you want to look at empty buildings that are about to get torn down, or do you want projects to happen?
Yeah, and to that I will say, we don't want to look at empty buildings. And I commend the Duprees for, the work that they're trying to do here and the development that they're trying to put downtown. I mean, it's going to be a lot of money that's going to be thrown downtown. And it's going to, I'm excited for beer and bowling. I'll bring my daughter over and we go bowling. And, if that happens, that would be fantastic. But reading this and now going back into the terms of the TIF, which is the CEA agreement, right? The percentage that is requested, the 75%. So we don't have an overall strategy as far as, what could happen potentially with our TIFs when they mature. And now as a city body, we're deciding that we're going to give a 75% discount on this particular project, right, for a period of 20 years. 20 years. Yes, we're going to be making money. Let's get that. Let's make this clear. We're going to be making more money because the value of the property is going to be more. But we could be capturing more money because we all here know
that our city is struggling as far as money, right? So we want to get as much money as we can so that we don't see our taxes increase. We don't see your taxes increase. So are we comfortable saying to the taxpayer of the city that we want to capture as much money as we can from any project that we possibly can get, but we're going to turn around and decide that we're going to give back 75% of the money that we could be keeping to purchase a ladder truck, to purchase, a police cruiser, to use in a way that will help us take money, not take away money from our general fund? Are we comfortable doing that and telling the public that, yes, potentially, we don't want to capture as much money that we can possibly capture from the front end, so that maybe if in 30 years or so for now, there's no strategy still, and everybody that was on the TIF committee is dead, and our children grow up, we have enough money in the coffers to be able to account for the increase in value that's going to happen when the TIF is not sheltered anymore.
Yes, let me just say one word, and I'm going to get to Councilor Thomas. I appreciate your excitement. Yes, and we have some comments over here, so sorry for not seeing you, Councilor Tate. I would say yes, because I've actually looked at the financials. And
I have not seen the financial. By the way, I asked for those, and I never got,
okay.
I wasn't able to get any copies.
So what you're saying sounds great, but this project is not going to, it's one thing if you have a billionaire that's down here shelling out tens of millions of dollars in cash, and this project comes together without this agreement. It's another thing when this agreement is a critical piece to putting together the financial package to obtain further financing, bank financing, to make the project come together. So that would be my comment. I feel 100% comfortable because I know that if we don't do this, then the net effect to the taxpayers is going to be zero.
Okay, so my question here is...
excuse me, I want to go to Councilor Thomas and then to Councilor Tate, and then we'll get back to you, Councilor.
Absolutely.
Well, there's a lot of things you said that I wouldn't agree are factually accurate. One, first of all, you're sort of looking at risk down the road, but in the meantime, you'd be giving up tax dollars that we'd be collecting for the next 40 years. And by putting these properties in a TIF, we'll collect, over the last 10 years, we'll collect 40% more in revenue than we would otherwise without putting them in a TIF. And that assumes that the project would happen at all without a TIF. I would point out, as Regan said, this is a $10.5 million project that will result in a building worth $5.5 million. So there's a $5 million gap there that needs to be made up somewhere. Now, what Colby has done with their buildings downtown is a different story, because Colby could afford to take a loss on those projects, but no private investor in their right mind, at that point it becomes philanthropy. It's not business anymore, it's philanthropy. And I believe they're looking to make up that $5 million gap partly with historic tax credits, and then the remaining gap will be made up with this credit enhancement agreement. And I've been on the TIF advisory committee for off and on for the last 8 years, I believe. And I've seen quite a few of these come through, and I'll tell you, I've never, I was skeptical about the gas pipeline because we were dealing with a large multinational corporation. But at the same time, you have to look at each one of these projects on its own merits and what makes financial sense, because even if you're a large multinational corporation, you're not going to intentionally lose money. And in this case, we are not talking about a large multinational corporation. We're talking about a family business. And, so obviously it would not make sense. They're not doing, I think they're doing this partly because they love Waterville, but they're certainly not going to do it and lose money. And so I know everyone wants to look like they're trying to be tough and look out for the taxpayers, but I am 100% convinced, given all of my history on the TIF committee, this project absolutely would not happen without the credit enhancement agreement as outlined in the proposal. And I would want to speak to what Sandy asked earlier about what the uses are for the city's share of the tax dollars that's outlined in this TIF agreement. Some of the eligible uses of the city's share of the money would be acquisition of property and demolition of structures, parking development and debt service payments, construction and modification of public infrastructure, including but not limited to sewers, water, streets, telecommunications, sidewalks and common elevators, streetscape improvements, including but not limited to streetlights and enhanced pedestrian connections in downtown, especially to Hedda Falls and the Hathaway areas, the signage program, facade program. Additionally, financing costs of the City of Waterville eligible uses would be site-specific credit enhancement agreements, which is what we're talking about here, the common elevator program, the facade program, professional services, procurement of engineers, architects, planners, and consultants to undertake activities to implement the development program and downtown plan, update existing downtown plans or create new plans as necessary, and then administrative expenses such as our dues to the Chamber of Commerce, the Central Maine Growth Council, and Waterville Creates, and similar economic development organizations. And the city and its economic development department that are linked to specific downtown redevelopment activities, cost of increased public services in downtown that result from successful implementation of the downtown TIF and this TIF, including but not limited to increased public safety, security, police, fire, emergency. In other words, we can offset some of our police, fire, and emergency expenses with some of this money. Increased public maintenance, plowing, mowing, trash litter removal, and increased utility costs, marketing, collateral material, advertisements, promotions, events, and festivals. So there's a lot of things that we currently spend general fund tax dollars on that are eligible to be paid for with TIF dollars. And TIFs are a way, again, it's the most misunderstood part of municipal government. It's a way for the city to maximize the tax dollars that it collects. And that's sort of separate from the credit enhancement agreement, which is more of a tool to encourage the development in the first place. And I've heard people talk about, well, what about other building owners who might come asking for a TIF? What will the city do then? If every building owner downtown wants to spend $10 million fixing up their property, then send us a proposal for a TIF agreement. I will say that right now.
Thank you. We have Councilor Tay is next.
Okay.
This has been somewhat addressed by the statements here, but I just wanted to clarify, because I also have not seen the financials, and I shared the initial concern about what it means to give back 75% of the new tax revenue. But to be clear, when you say there is going to be a $10.5 million investment, you're not saying you have $10 million in your pocket right now, you're going to invest it, and then you just don't feel like paying the rest of the taxes. This is an agreement that will allow you to procure the financing that will make possible that $10.5 million investment, or am I mistaken in how this works?
Is that correct?
The credit enhancement agreement, the name credit enhancement agreement is truly to enhance your credit for when you go to a bank. So this document is used as a means to elevate their credit to be able to get financing. So the name of the
tool actually is what it's self-explanatory.
So the question that I have regarding that, because there was a comment that was made that if the 75% wasn't given to this, by the city, that the project would not happen based on financials. Is this something that is put in writing by a bank that stated that if the city did not provide you 75% discount on your project, they will not give you a loan?
I'm Justin Dupre. That's a great question. Basically, we've gone through the financials of the project, and there's a basic framework for getting the loan, that the debt-to-income ratio that has to be hit for any bank that's going to approve financing for this. And based off the projected income for this, we absolutely would need that the credit enhancement agreement at the 75% to allow for that loan. We've spoken with lending institutions. We've showed them the exact same pro forma that I brought to the TIF committee meeting, and they have looked it over and understood that and agreed with that.
So the bank has stated that without this 75%, kickback from the city, they will not be able to provide you a loan.
That's correct. There'd be no way we'd be able to hit the minimum ratios and the returns that would be necessary to get that.
The income ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say, the people who are on our TIF committee, these are our friends, these are our neighbors, these are our business professionals here in town. These are not sharks, they're not people who are looking to give away city funds. These are people who actually come into projects like this quite skeptical, as you guys experience. There's a lot of hammering questions. It's not easy to be in front of this committee. I certainly wouldn't want to be on the other side of the table asking for these deals. But ultimately, what it comes down to, when they start actually crunching those numbers and finding that debt to income ratio on these properties, that is typically the turning point for people, because I would say the vast majority of the members of this committee are there to almost to start at no, and you have to work your way to yes. And it's kind of impressive to watch how they do that, and the continual back and forth demands for more information, more financials, more pro formas, more bank statements to prove to that committee that this is essential.
Okay. So again, I will reiterate that I did not see any financial. I heard that statement, and I asked for those documents, and I haven't seen any. So I like numbers, right? So I like these kind of numbers. Looking at this, because this is another thing that I had to learn, right? When we created TIF, what we would lose anyway from creating a TIF would be at 30 to 35%, right? And looking at the numbers for what came into this proposal, it would be an average of $152,608.
I want to correct something. Hang on. I want to correct something. This money isn't money that's lost with the creation of a TIF. This is what happened. This is what we lose when we increase actual value. A TIF shelters us from
That's
losing
what we
that
lose
amount.
if we don't have a TIF.
Correct. Thank you.
I believe and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I believe that the TIF committee meetings are open if people would like to. I think there were people at both meetings who weren't on the committees too who can.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep, they're always open.
So there's the opportunity, if to sit in on those meetings in the future as well. So see the numbers and everything.
And this does take 2 votes. I do think you are owed those financials before the next one.
Okay. So going back to this, so this is what happened if we don't have a TIF, right? So that said, we could lose this amount if we had a TIF, the 30%, the 35%.
No, if you don't have a TIF. No, if you don't have a TIF, Counselor.
Okay. So within the TIF, so if you went to go ahead and give you guys a discount, right, which is the 30 to 35% in lost revenue, based on this document that I have here, over a year, it will be $152,608, and over 30 years, it will be $4.5 million, right? I believe I'm reading that right, which is about 30 to 35% if we were to give you guys a 30 to 35% CEA with the current investment.
No, that's money we would lose to the state. By putting this money in a TIF district, it means the state basically pretends it doesn't exist. And if we don't put in a TIF district, then they're going to whack us, we're going to lose revenue sharing dollars, we're going to lose school subsidy dollars, we're going to pay more money to the county in taxes. The 35% is what we lose, and that's with the current rate of revenue sharing, correct? That number actually gets worse if revenue sharing goes back to 5%.
Yes, it does.
All right, so I feel like, hang on, I feel like Bob Barker up here with this microphone, by the way. I want to be clear, because there's a lot of things being said, and a lot of them are not accurate. So I want to clear this up for the public here. If we do not do a TIF, if we do not do a TIF, and we increase property values, we will lose 30 to 35% of those increased values because our county tax will go up, our state education subsidies will go down. If we do a TIF, then we shelter us from that loss. I just want to be clear, that is actually the numbers we're talking about here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So he's absolutely correct. He's 100% correct, right? So
well, that's the opposite of what you've been saying.
If we don't do the TIF, right, our county tax, we will have to pay what was that, the 35? That's what we will lose, right? So if we do the TIF, then we can say we would have lost that money anyway, right, if we didn't do the TIF. So therefore, we will say as a city, we can give you that money, because if we didn't do the TIF and you invested, we would have lost it. And it would make sense for us as a city to give you that money that we would have lost anyway, right, if you guys did the project and we didn't have the TIF. So anything above that money that we give away, right, that we would have lost anyway, if the TIF wasn't existing, is money that is out of the city's pocket.
Well, actually, it's not, because we're actually going to be making net more money than we would have if these projects didn't happen, and these projects won't happen financially.
Yes, you're rolling the dice. This assumes that the project actually happens without giving them the credit.
Again, that is basically what the mayor is stating, that we are trying to create the worst case scenario, right? And say, well, if it doesn't happen, this is what will happen.
Actually, that's not what, excuse me, that is not what I'm saying at all, and you will not put words in my mouth, Counselor. That is not what I'm saying at all.
All right.
What I'm saying, excuse me,
Go
I'm
ahead.
talking. What I'm saying is, I've seen the financials here. You haven't, and I'm sorry, I don't know why you haven't. But what I'm also saying is, I understand finance, and I've seen the pro formas. The banks are not going to give them loans. Look, first of all, this is still a gamble. This is a win-win for the city. We don't risk anything by doing this. If these guys fail, they might actually lose some money. But we're going to get some more money out of it. So please don't put words in my mouth. Don't say what I've been saying. That's not at all what I've been saying. I realize you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole that you dug into, but that's not really the proper way to do it.
So, okay, I appreciate the comment. What I will say, again, is this. The numbers are there for anybody who wants to take a look at them, all right? Learning about the TIFs, like I said, in my short time here, if we do this TIF and we give away 75% of the money that we could collect, right? That is a discount that we're providing, right? There was an uproar here about, the city providing a one-time discount to the Alphon Youth Center, all right, for $27,000, all right? I don't think that we can sit here and justify a 75% 20-year discount. And when the city is struggling for money, when the city is trying, to capture every possible dollar that we can possibly capture to make sure that, our taxes stay at a level where it will take care of the people of this city. And I really believe that 75%, I understand, right? I understand that this is an investment that you guys are making, and I commend the DePrez family for doing that. I am a big business person, and at the same time, I also believe that we have to do what's right for the city. And what's right for the city is to try to capture as much money as we can. And that goes with doing deals that only will be beneficial, for the investors, but at the same time, put enough money into the city's coffin so that we can, take that TIF money and purchase a ladder truck and invest in other aspects of the city that otherwise we wouldn't be able to with collecting less money.
So if this project doesn't work out, we don't approve it. What else is in line for those to increase the revenues we're going to get off that, to buy that ladder truck you want?
I am not sure what's in line, but what I'm talking about...
How long were those buildings empty?
Can I finish my statement?
I guess if you want to get lines in the newspaper, which it seems what you're trying to do.
We're trying to ask for the opportunity to invest $10.5 million of money that we're borrowing, that we're personally liable for. If you'd like to make up the difference yourself, that's fine. I'll take your money, no problem. But we're trying to invest $10.5 million that we're going to be on the hook for here, and we're asking you to give us the opportunity to do it. If you don't want it to do it, that's your decision. But we're going to try to do that and do the best job we can. We take pride in the work that we do, and we want to put our best foot forward. And I'm happy that the Hathaway Center's there, and I think that's better than an old building. You can see the other buildings there that have all the windows broken out of them there, and I hope that gets done at some point. But that TIF allowed that to go forward as well, and this is going to allow us to make a huge investment. And without it, I'm telling you, we can't do it, and it's still an enormous risk for my family and I. If this project doesn't work out for Colby, then they have $700 million of other money to do it. So this is a big deal for us, and we're trying to do what's right, and we're just trying to make it work the best we can. And we want this to go forward, and without it, we cannot have it to go forward. So we're asking the opportunity to allow us to make an investment in the community here as a family business.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councilor Mayhew, and if Mr. Dupre, you'd like to offer commentary, and then we're going to open it to the public. So Councilor Mayhew, Mr.
I think one thing that you have to realize, and I think that is what Justin just said was absolutely true. But it's analogous. What's analogous is what happened in the city of New York with the Amazon situation, where Amazon was going to spend $27 billion in building buildings, bringing jobs to New York City, and they were the new city was going to give back to them approximately $3 billion worth of tax benefits. Okay, so now Amazon pulled out because of some representative who decided that that they were going to lose $3 billion. Okay, but in the case they never had the $3 billion. It was not $3 billion to lose. So the point is that if without the TIF, okay, and the CEA, this project doesn't go forward. So you get nothing. Okay. So that's the bottom line. So the idea is, if without a TIF and without the CEA, the project doesn't go forward. There isn't any increase in the tax revenues at all. So I think that's what you have to really consider.
Yep. Councilor Mayhew, and then we're opening to the public.
Yeah, I have to say something. A lot of highly speculative comments, said here about this, and the notion of saving money for the taxpayer is always and always has been, I think, been the mantra of all the councils, and specifically myself with my district. I can tell you that I'm as conservative as can be when it comes to the budget, voting for a lean budget and vice versa for money for the taxpayer. But I think, again, there's a lot of misunderstanding and misrepresentation here and uneducation of what TIFs are and what they provide. If you don't have business, you're not going to have any taxes to collect down the road long term. And as a business advocate myself, for all the time I've been on the council, and I've been on the TIF committee for 5.5 years in conjunction with Eric Thomas, and I can tell you the high professionals that are on the tax increment finance committee are real. They're real people that have an expertise, as the mayor has quoted, and we give recommendations not out of a Cracker Jack box. We give highly recommendations for financials that we think will work in the best interest of the city. This is a $10.5 million project from private entrepreneurs that don't have the clout and financial might of a Colby College. And everything is based on a case-by-case basis. If you think about the long term, where we just had a tax reval just a year and a half ago that affected different wards of the city in residential taxes, I know I was one of them. I know the mayor was one of them. Several wards out of 7 wards was affected disproportionately. The ultimate goal here for the city is to eventually get the tax reval to shift from residential back to commercial. This ain't going to happen if we don't have commercial business.
To at least normalize that.
Yeah, to normalize
before, yeah.
But commercial, ultimately what a municipality wants is they want the commercial side to bear the lion's share of taxes, not the residents. So when you think about that in context, that's what the long-term goal should always be, is to find tax relief for residents. And I think there's a lot of that being spun around here to a certain extent, but we have to look at it from a comprehensive view. And let me tell you, this is what it's all about. It's a life or death of something happening. It's a risk on their part. We're showing support. We're still benefiting in long term on everything with this agreement. And that is why, I think it's still, without a doubt and without a question, the best thing moving forward is just to support this.
I'm going to go to Councilor Thomas, and then to Mr. Payne, and then to Mr. Veer.
I just 2 points. One, I know Councilor Bofia thinks that there's a plethora of choices here, but really that we have 2 choices here. Either we continue to collect 100% of the taxes onto abandoned buildings that are currently worth about $400,000, or they invest $10.5 million facilitated by this agreement, and then we collect 25% of the revenue on a building's worth $5.5 million for the next 20 years, and then 100% of the revenue thereafter.
On top of what they're paying now.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's being missed here is that the city will also get 100 for starting from when the first business goes into this building, we will get 100% of the tax revenue on any personal property that belongs to any of the businesses that are doing business in that building. That's, you know, we're not talking about just the real estate here. There's also the property that will go into that building that will belong to any of those businesses, and they will pay taxes on that property, which could also amount to a significant amount of money. And so that's what we're looking at here. There's a reason that these buildings have been sitting empty for a long time. I had an office in both of these buildings at one point or another. I'm very familiar with what's upstairs. I don't know if the Dupreys would be willing, but that might be an interesting field trip for the council between now and the next meeting, is to see what the condition of the upstairs of those buildings is.
Like the pigeons and the
I mean, the other alternative, maybe, perhaps somebody could have come in and renovated those buildings without a credit enhancement agreement, but you would still see the metal facade on this building. You would still see that building all bricked over, and you would see somebody doing the bare minimum to make those buildings inhabitable. You would not be seeing them doing a historic renovation that restores those buildings to what they used to look like, because that would not make financial sense. And so that's really what we're talking about here. You know, and I for one will tell you that I was doing cartwheels the day I saw them tearing the facades off of those buildings, and that they were going to restore them to what they used to be.
Mr. Payne.
Julian Payne, Ward 5. I support the TIF. I hope the business owners aren't perturbed by the healthy discussion, but I think any city you move into where there's not discussion and debate and hard questions asked is probably a city you don't want to be doing business with, because obviously everyone up here cares in their own way. The one question I would have, and I would hope, and maybe they can reassure us or the council, that if a TIF was given of 75% of the value, sorry about this one, Mike, but that the full building permit was paid for that. And that was something that was, you know, agreed by the investors and the council ahead of time, as being as the large amount of the TIF. Thank you.
Thank you, and I can assure you, thank you for your comments, Mr. Payne. I can assure you that we will collect the full building permits on the build-outs. Yeah.
And I don't know the formula, but I would go out on a limb and say that the permit is probably worth 10 years of the taxes on that building.
Yeah.
Wtvl Ward 7. I respect Councilperson Boffia's comments. However, I'm not the sharpest knife in the cutlery drawer. But listening to this young lady from Kennebec Realty, she mentioned 50 jobs, $35,000 to $75,000 range, 50 employees. I understand that Waterville does need a fire truck, aerial ladder truck. I understand we have infrastructure that needs repair. By giving this TIF, and I really appreciate the Dupreys for stepping up in a city that I love for the past 61 years, to invest in a gamble nowadays, $10 million for 2 buildings that were sitting idle for 10 years. Yep. They were sitting idle. You're getting nothing. Now you're going to get something. I would rather have a piece of the pie than no pie at all. And hopefully, the employees start buying houses, boosting the residential, boosting the tax base. That's how we're going to make our money to supplement our school, our infrastructure, our police, fire department, first responders, and everything else that the city has. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments from the public?
Yeah. Yeah, I have another comment.
Yep.
Right. So I appreciate the comment from Mr. Veer, and just to clarify, they are paying something right now. So we do collect some money out of it. And what I'm saying here is not to shut down the TIF, right? What I'm advocating for is for the city to collect more money up front, so that we can pay for the city services, so that we can have more money to do all the things that we want to do as a city in terms of funding our libraries and funding, you know, our police, and funding all these departments. I'm not advocating to not give, you know, a deal to the Dupreys. I'm saying that the deal that we are giving, it is too much money that's been taken away from the coffins of the city. And I believe that if we were to reduce the amount of CEA that is provided to the Duprees, they will still get a substantial amount of money given back to them. And that's why I believe the 75% is too greater of a number.
So I went into this in part of the TIF committee. I didn't go to the last meeting. I don't like any TIF that's above 50%. I know that if we did nothing, we would lose that 35% anyway. Doing something, if we gave you an additional 15% to make it 50%, would make me comfortable. I understand that you need 75% to make this go through. Because of that, I will lean off of my 50% because I'd rather get $40,000 or $50,000 extra every year right now than not. So that's my opinion. Sorry.
Thanks. We're going to move to a vote. All in favor? All opposed? That was 6-1. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you for coming. Moving on, Resolution 69, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for pavement rehabilitation contract.
Move to adopt.
And second.
Mike, you just want to summarize this?
We, every year, we bid out our paving work, so this is something you'll see every time of year, this time of year. And these are the streets that are targeted for
want to read
pavement
them?
rehab.
You want to read them so people know, Mike?
Oh, yep.
In the mic. Get the mic right up to you.
Okay, got it. So for this coming summer, what's planned for an overlay, shim and overlay paving, which is not a comprehensive reworking of the street, but it's a substantial resurfacing, Boothby Street, Park Place, School Street, and Winter Street. Reclaim, which is a more intensive reworking or rebuilding of the street, will be Dalton, Nudd, and Shelton. You'll notice that these streets are grouped near to each other. It helps with the contractor to be located close to where the work is going to be rather than moving all over the city. So this is just for our annual paving. Hopefully the council will approve a bond order at some point in the next month or so that will include additional money for reconstruction work. But this comes
Which
out
will
of our-
include the Shores Road, just to be clear, right?
Yeah, right. It's at the top.
I see you, Sandy, out there. You know, we're not forgetting about you out there. This is just resurface here. Is there any discussion from the council?
And of course, Mark is here if there are any questions from Public Works.
Counselor?
I have a quick, what is the 10% contingency?
That allows for any unforeseeable work that we encounter, drainage, culverts, curbing.
Ledge, if it's closer to the surface than in a reclaim, not in an overlay.
Right, they don't know what they're going to find once they start.
Just making sure. Well, the only reason I say that is you would have done that whether or not you gave it to Pike Industries. You would have added a 10%.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just making sure. I like to leave things closer to home. So.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions or comments from the public?
When you look at this, Mark, and I appreciate you being here, so when you look at this, there is quite a difference in the amounts for all of these companies. And when you look at what you get for these prices, is there anything, like, what is Allstate do they do something different that B&B doesn't? Or, you know, Pike, like what makes them $30,000, $40,000 more than what B&B can do?
We're not certain. We bid these projects out real early in the season, so the competitiveness isn't really as intense as it would normally be. And we think they kind of, talk to each other and say, all right, we're gonna give you this area this summer. Pike's gonna take the interstate work. They've abandoned most of the community paving programs and have done only interstate work the last several years. Same way with lane construction. But they bid the projects because we send them out invitations to bid. Some of them may be bidding deliberately high just not to get the job.
Or that's what, like, if we were like, yeah, we'll pay you that, and they're like, all right, we'll do it.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, wow. So that has nothing to do with the quality of the work that they're going to be performing at all?
And these are, you have, either have history or you've checked references before we accept one of these
B&B
bids?
Paving has, out of the past 5 years, had 3 contracts with us. They've done good work.
Yep.
It's all by Maine Department of Transportation specifications and requirements, so
Great.
they have to follow strict specifications and guidelines.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Veer.
Bob Veer, Ward 7. I have a question. King Street on the Water Street to almost in front of my house, which is 1315 King Street, Mark, is I have a Jeep, and I do a lot of off-roading, and we have what we call spotters. There's some potholes that my grandson wants to go fishing in, and I'm sure throughout the city, there's places like that. How do it's getting really problematic. How do citizens get that work done?
Just call the office and we'll put in a work order to fix the potholes. Can't do the whole street, but we'll do the remedial repairs.
In this situation, to be honest with you, Mark, it needs to get down
I know, that's
way bad.
the section going out towards Water Street.
Correct.
Very bad shape.
Very bad shape. And,
Several of those
I'm looking at wear and tear on Chief Massey's cruisers, the fire apparatus, Delta.
Your Jeep.
The Jeep.
What I will say, Mr. Veer, is we are going to be discussing some bonding coming up here for some larger projects, which includes full rebuilds.
Yeah, my question when I saw this, and I want to thank Councilman Phil Bofia for posting it, when I saw a pavement rehabilitation contract, I wasn't quite sure if this was a time to bring that up.
And actually, Bob, believe it or not, I drive down your street all the time when I'm just driving through the city, checking things out, and I concur with your assessment.
Mark, where is King Street on the Public Works plan for roads?
Sure, but it must be close to the top.
That's going to be a rebuild, though, I would think.
Yeah.
That and Cary Lane.
Yeah.
Because I drove down there the other day because I heard about it from a constituent, and there is a pothole that's probably 18 inches deep, and it's big, too.
I'll have the crew in to fix that.
Thank you. For the resolution at hand, 69, 2019, we're going to take a vote. All in favor? Okay. Moving on to Resolution 70, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
And second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for bid award traffic paint.
Move to adopt.
And second.
Discussion.
I just like that it's local.
Absolutely.
This is an every year item also. Every spring, we buy traffic paint for all the painting, striping that we do throughout the city.
Okay.
So basically the same question that I had before is, is it the quality of work that determines the amount that is bid out by all the people, or are we getting less for our money? Are we going to be getting...
No, we provide them the specifications for the paint.
Yeah.
And they have to meet those specifications.
Okay.
And we're confident that the bids we get are from people that are definitely competent in providing that product.
And in this case, the city does the work, right, Mark? We're just buying the paint from Sherwin-Williams.
Just buying the materials.
Yep.
I'm glad we didn't go with the lowest price. I mean, they're almost the lowest price, but
Great.
it's local.
We did, I think we implemented a policy when I was on the council before about giving some weight to local.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take a vote. All in favor? Next, Order 71, 2019.
Move to read by title only.
And second.
All in favor?
Preliminary engineering for Phase 2 of the outdoor pool renovation project.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Mike, where's this cash coming from? Is $48,000?
The cash is going to come from the remaining amount that we have from Phase 1. So Phase 1 was the slides, and those slides were demolished last fall by the Public Works crew. We bid out the new slide, and that's going to be installed very soon.
But this is leftover funds after paying for those new slides?
Yes.
Correct. Yep.
Yep. Yep. And this is a very, very important piece for us to get done, because without this engineering survey, it's really impossible for us to know what the cost of Phase 2 is going to be, because Phase 2 is going to address everything else besides the slides.
At the water park?
Municipal pool.
The water park. The aquaboggin over
Municipal
there.
pool with a
Like
slide.
aquaboggin over there. You kidding me?
But we need to, we'll be approaching the Alphon Foundation for support, as we did with the slides. So it's very important for us to have an estimate, to go to them and say, the remaining amount of work is X amount. And here's the survey, the engineering design
Right.
that shows that.
And I think that's understandable, Mike.
Questions from the public? Yeah, come on up.
Hi, I'm Sandy Sullivan from Ward 5. When we were discussing the slides last year, weren't we already given what needs to be done to fix the pool and how much, like it's over $1 million?
Not at all. Not even close.
What do you mean, not at all?
Not at all. That's why I vetoed the budget. That's why I vetoed the budget, because we didn't have the money for it.
But
Yeah,
the
we
budget
didn't-
went through.
Yeah,
So I have
because
news for you, the budget went through.
yeah, because that council that was here at the time overrode me. But no, we got money for the slides in particular.
Yes. But
This,
at the
so this is money that is left over from that to determine what is, we never had $1 million to fix the pool, ever.
No, I didn't say we have it. I said when we were given the figures for the slide, that we were also told that repair work needed to be done on the pool that would also total over $1 million.
Right.
That they've broken up in two phases.
Right. No, hang on.
The,
So this is finding out exactly what that price tag's going to be.
And so we're paying twice.
This is money, no, this is money that's left over from the slides that we were given by the Alphons.
The estimate that we used, or the design, or the survey that we used last year when we said we thought it was going to be more, $1 million for the remaining piece, that estimate, engineering work, was done in the summer of 2014, so almost 5 years ago. So we were not comfortable going forward with that old estimate, which really didn't comprehensively look at everything back then.
And so it was $1 million back then, so we can expect $2 million now then?
Well, I think we need to wait for the design to be completed, and then we'll know. I can't estimate what it is. I hope, no.
Me neither, Jules, because I don't want flyers handed out, down at the pool this summer with our names on it. All right, we'll move to a vote. We're on Order 71, 2019. All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. Resolution 72, 2019.
Extension of city manager's contract. Be it resolved by the City Council of City of Waterville, acting as municipal officers as follows. That the council chair be authorized to execute a contract extension with the city manager according to the terms and conditions shown on the attached contract extension. The purpose of this resolution is to extend the current contract with the city manager by 1 year to December 31st, 2020.
Move to adopt.
And that's second.
All right, council discussion? I would just say that, you know, we've had some executive sessions on that. I don't feel like I'm breaking confidentiality. See some general things the public should be aware of. Mike has agreed to, during this additional year, to spend a lot of his time focused on succession planning. The council's going to have a big job in front of them because we're going to have to find our next city manager in this next year, which is going to require, I think, a lot more work than a lot of us think, because we want to make sure we have someone who's going to be here with a little bit of longevity, and Mike's going to have to pass on a lot of his historical knowledge and a lot of his relationships that he's had with all of the different groups we work with and the citizenry. But we also have other departments. I'm looking at Mark Turner shaking his head at Public Works. We have a lot of department heads who have been here for a very long time. I can think of Mark. Sorry, Chief, you're not a spring chicken. Not that I'm pushing you out the door here, but I mean, you have a deputy. You have a little bit more of a plan in your department, I think, in general. But we have, gosh, we have a city assessor who's not going to be here forever. And one of the things Mike is going to be spending that time working on is working with those department heads, as well as his own position, which the council will be heavily involved with, and trying to make sure that as we have this big wave of upcoming retirements, that we are doing our best to make sure that those spots are filled with the best possible applicants, so the people of Waterville can have hopefully a fairly seamless and positive transition during those times.
Yeah, and I want to echo those. We had some lively meetings with Mike, and we wanted to make sure that the transition, that would take place was a smooth one, and we felt that as though, it would be a good continuation of all the things that have been happening in the city, and it would benefit us tremendously to plan a transition phase that will take place over about a year plus, and allowing Mike to be able to go through that transition and not only finish the work that he already started, and also help out whoever is going to be the next city manager, was the best way to go ahead and go with this particular item.
I've been working with Mike in one form or another through various committees and boards and planning board and city council for about 15 years now, which really makes me feel old. It's actually, on a side note, it's funny because I used to hate when people used to tell me, hey, we tried that before and it didn't work, and now I'm the guy who says that to people. One of the first things I did when I got on the council before was to vote to give Mike Roy a 5-year contract. And I don't know if Mike remembers, but I had a little hesitation at that point just because we hadn't worked together in this role. And 5 years was a long commitment, it seemed at the time. But I just want to say, I think people don't really have an idea of just how much work Mike puts into his job, how many different, he needs to be aware of so many different things that are going on, not just with the day-to-day running of the city, but larger things going on with the Growth Council, the Chamber of Commerce, First Park. He was on the Waterville Main Street Board with me. There's a lot of hours after his work day is supposed to be over that Mike puts into things, and I know he takes a lot of heat because he is, ultimately he's the city manager, and I don't remember who it was that said, the buck stops here, and the buck stops with Mike because he is the one who's doing the day-to-day. The people up here, we're all, I know we're elected, but we all have other things that we do. And we, essentially we're really our volunteers, and so as volunteers you can only put so much time into the job. And, Mike is the guy on the front lines dealing with the day-to-day. And he has to deal with different personalities, the council changes and people have different things that they think should be his priorities. And there's, new mayors. We've had very strong mayors over the years that Mike's been here.
He started with Paul LePage and went to Karen Heck and then to me. He has not had it easy, guys.
And then there's different phases of groups of the public that become concerned about issues, and Mike has to deal with all of those things. And so it's not an easy job. And I know people have concerns, and there's decisions he's made that people will question, and that's sort of the nature of being in leadership. But I certainly intend to vote to give him 1 more year in his contract. Mike has done a really good job for the city, and if you're going to give him the blame for things that go wrong, you also have to give him some of the credit for all the things that go right, and there is a lot going right in Waterville. And it's not just by happenstance. I think Mike's done a really good job over the time that he's been here, and he deserves another year.
Counselor.
Me?
Yes, you.
Yeah, I want to speak on behalf of Mike Roy as well. I have worked with him for well over 4 years now. Gotten to know him pretty good time with front to back, and we've had many a conversation on the phone and some conversations in his office, and sometimes I vowed not to leave his office till I got my way with him. They're
He didn't get his way all
not all the time. What I want to
Hey, careful what you wish for out there, folks.
What I want to point out is that Mike Roy has been a scapegoat to a lot of the ills and ails of the city. And being a business manager for 35 plus years myself, Mike, and we've had these conversations, like any manager that runs with a number of department heads and the personnel that you do, you are where the buck stops. And there's a lot of speculation by certain people, and you're going to get equal praise and criticisms, although the praise doesn't always come publicly, and it comes very remotely at times. Believe me, I know. We all experience that being in the leadership field. But I can tell you that I have had a very good relationship with you, as well as all the councils that I've been a part of, even private business people that I have talked to. Many have high regard for you. My sentiments, and along with several other people on the council, is I do not feel that 1 year extension is too much to ask. I think it's very appropriate, and a succession plan is very important for department heads, and including yourself. I think that can be done with great continuity and consistency by doing this. I think it's in the best interest of the city to do that. And I want to let everybody know that he does put a lot of time and effort into his job, because I have talked to him personally on his cell phone out of business hours when it has to be, and along with, I'm sure, with a lot of other councils here, including Erica's. Erica has worked with him obviously the most and has known him the longest. But I definitely would like to let you know that I do support your 1 year extension, and I think it's in the best interest of the city at this time, in conjunction with the succession plan, and for the economic revitalization that is going on downtown, with your experience and your knowledge, and you having know of the pressing concerns that we have conveyed to you, that we want you to be the spot man with economic development input and emphasis on that. So with that, I say that I would vote in support of that.
Any other questions or comments from the council? We will open it up to public commentary.
Good evening. I'm Tom Longstaff, president of Ward 6, and I'm here to speak very briefly in support of extending the city manager's contract. I've been a resident of Waterville for 50 years. Hard to believe that. I came to Waterville in August of 1969. I've been relatively active in the community, often in ways that have given me insights into the working of our city government. I'm going to take a few minutes at the beginning to mention some of those. Don't think I'm off on a tangent. I'll come back to the point at hand very briefly. And so these things that I mentioned will become a part of the reason why I enthusiastically support the renewal of Mike's contract. As some of you may know, I was elected as a member of the City Charter Commission, which meant during the years 2004 and 2005. I was also chosen as the co-chair of that committee. Our major task was to refine the definition of Waterville's local government, defining more carefully than had been done in the past the roles of the mayor, the city manager, the city council. And our recommendations were approved by the residents of Waterville. And I believe, although I don't have the details before me at the moment, that a subsequent charter commission made additional modifications, changes to our system of government in the city. In 2005, I was elected to serve on the city council, and I remained on the council representing Ward 6 for 5 years, resigning when I was elected to the Maine State Legislature. With Eric, who sat beside me on the city council in those days. I was one of the councilors when we appointed Mike as the city manager back in it was 2007, wasn't it?
A little earlier.
Oh, that's right, 2005. 2004. So I was there. I was part of that. And as I said, I served in the House of Representatives from 2011 to 2018, representing District 109, the southern part of Waterville. I served on committees that had jurisdiction over legislation that often had very important ramifications for our local communities. Criminal justice, veterans and legal affairs. I currently serve on the board of directors for Kennebec Behavioral Health, the board of directors for the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter. I'm a member of the Kennebec and Somerset Commission against Sex Trafficking and Forced Labor. And some of my other activities, I'll be very brief and then get to the point. I appreciate what you were saying, Mr. Boffia. Years ago, I was a member of the Waterville Fire Department, and I was a member of the ladder company, and I climbed that ladder on the truck before the one we have now. I then became a first responder with Delta Ambulance. You see a lot of things in the city when you work for the fire department and Delta that you don't see, or as the police know, that you see. I was a board member and chair of the board of the Waterville Opera House, board member and chair of the Mid-Maine Global Forum, board member and chair of the United Way of Mid-Maine, board member of the Kennebec County Children and Family Resource Council, and a per diem chaplain at Maine General. But this isn't about me. It's about Mike. On the basis of my experience in all of these organizations that I have mentioned, I have come to have a very high regard for Mike's integrity and the way he has conducted himself as our city manager. From the time he was appointed until now, I have found him to be approachable, willing to talk about pending legislation or policies, especially things that affected the city of Waterville immediately. We have talked about such things as the opioid crisis, revenue sharing, support for the schools, addressing the issues of unemployment and poverty, and a host of other things. I believe that he works well with our police and fire departments and our public assistance programs. Of course, none of us who serve the public can please all of the people all of the time. But my experience has been that Mike has conducted himself very well. He has been willing to listen to those who agree or disagree with him and to engage in a respectful dialogue And that's very important, a respectful dialogue with those, whether he agrees with them or not. In short, I believe that Mike has served our city very well for more than a decade, and I'm confident that if his contract is renewed, extended, he will continue to do so. If anything, I'm disappointed tonight that the item on the agenda is to extend his contract for a year. I know he's retiring, but were we looking at renewing it for 3 years, I would consider that a happy event. So, as a longtime resident and taxpayer in the city of Waterville, I fully support this resolution to extend Mike's contract for the coming year. And finally, I'd like to thank Mike personally. I'd like to thank the mayor. I'd like to thank each of you who sit on the city council for the time and effort that you give to governing our city. It's not an easy task, you know that, but it's one worth doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Is there any other questions or comments from the public?
Good evening, Kathy Weeks, Ward 1. When I was running for Ward 1 election, the two topics of people that I did not even know was the concern for the property taxes that cannot increase and the need for a new city manager. The residents, many that I did not even know, had that concern of we need a new city manager that can provide the leadership, being a fiscal conservative. I am hoping that the council will not give the extension. I know there are two people within the city walls that could step into that manager's position today, being very well qualified and experienced. Many concerns. You know, the latest one was the $27,000 that, had it not been discovered, would never have been discussed. The use of the quarry road using city workers, until that was discovered, over $30,000. The land that we're sitting on tonight for the Colby Dorm, it was never bid out, and a Marden's price of over $300,000. Thomas College sent a bill for the use of the gym when we first voted, and that was paid for until that was discovered. There is a continuous theme here. I do not see the leadership that Waterville needs. We have been in dire straits. Fortunately, we've had a mayor that has the fiscal conscience and has tried to help the Waterville residents and not just Colby. Another expense was giving direction to install an antenna on the new fire station, which was inappropriate. So money had to be spent to move it up to the police area. I mean, I could go on and on. I am just hoping that the council will see this is just April. You could start the search now for a qualified person to come in to give another year extension, and then paying for a new person, so that would be double the money paid. Just inappropriate for our city at this time. Thank you.
The one thing I will point out is that Mike does act at the behest of the city council. So I can't really answer every single one of those things that was up there. I guess I won't. I guess I'm going to leave it. Bye.
I mean, one example would be that the city council had to vote to approve the sale of this property. That's not a decision Mike made unilaterally.
Right.
Hi, so I'm Jim LaLiberty. I'd just like to say a few quick things on behalf of Mike's contract renewal. I have Tom Longstaff beat. I've lived here for longer than he has, apparently, 64 years. I've practiced law here for 39 years, and in that 39-year period, I have dealt professionally with the city administrators that worked at Waterville before the position became a manager's position. I've worked with professionally almost all of the city administrators or managers in surrounding central towns, central Maine towns, and I can say, without a doubt, Mike is the most qualified, the most knowledgeable, and the easiest person to get along with of all of those people that I've worked with in my entire career. He grew up in Waterville. He has been the only manager that Waterville has had. He understands the city, he understands the business, he understands what's happening on Main Street, and my only question is there even a question about renewing his contract? I think we would be crazy as a city to not renew it. It would be like, to me, it would be like watching the Patriots play in the Super Bowl, and at halftime, if you didn't like one thing that Belichick did, saying, we're going to remove him as coach right now. We're in our own Super Bowl right now with what's happening on Main Street, and I can't imagine a worse time to remove Mike, and so I would strongly, strongly urge that you accept his contract for another year. Thank you.
Hi, Cindy Jacobs, Ward 4, and as most of you know, President of the Library Board. I've worked with Mike for the past, not as long as a lot of the rest of these guys, but at least 5 to 7 years. Mike's the keeper of the knowledge of Waterville. We are in an area where our growth is huge. We need that background knowledge. I just went through a transition, as you all know, at the library, where I lost a director that built a library from mushrooms to national metal. And then she decided to move on.
And she means literally mushrooms
There were
growing
mushrooms.
inside the
I mean, it was
library because
awful.
we hadn't
And
kept
to
up
be
with the maintenance.
perfectly honest with you, when I first talked to her about it, which was long before anybody knew about any of this, I was terrified. You need time to get a person involved that's been a part of the group that has the transition. We were so lucky at the library that we got Tammy Rabideau as our director, who had been working with Sarah for 9 years. Our transition was easy. And I can't even imagine what trying to do a transition like this would be without Mike's expertise, without his biased. He's a non-biased person when it comes to getting along with people. He listens to everyone. He has all these outside connections, and I just think that we would really be doing the city a big disservice by not taking advantage of his offer to help us with this transition. Thanks.
Julian Payne, Ward 5. I haven't always agreed with Mike. It's not really my job to. I was a rabble-rousing grassroots resident, and I think that any time that there's a spoke in the wheel of the establishment, it can smooth things out and make for a better process all the way. I haven't always agreed, well, maybe never agreed, but the only time I really got upset with Mike was when I think there was a bit of a political cross between city manager staying out of politics, and I think one of the councillors, who thankfully is no longer here, might have kind of pulled him down into the weeds a bit, where really he might have stayed away from that. But that's also no secret. But I gotta give the guy some credit. Something I don't know about. He survived the heck years. Thank you.
My name's Bob Martin. I'm an attorney at the Martin Dubois office. I grew up in Waterville. I currently reside in Oakland, so don't hold that against me, but Waterville is near and dear to my heart. I'm a Waterville business owner, and I too have got to know Mike over the years, both growing up, but in dealing with him on business matters. clearly, you just need to focus what's before you tonight. And if what's been worked out is an extension for him to work for another contract year, I urge you to take it. I don't need to remind you of all of what's been done and what Michael's been involved with here. But the specific areas of integrity, stability, and competence, as what's been discussed here, is all that you need. And you folks have an opportunity to have Mike with you for this next year. I urge you to take it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
As a department head, I'd like to share my relationship with the city manager, Mike Roy, over the last 14 years. I've worked for 6 city managers, and by far, Mike is on the top of that list. It is so critical to provide the services that we need in this city, and that falls to the job of the department heads. But we could not do it without Mike's leadership, his management style, his willingness to give us the autonomy and independence to do that, but yet the oversight and guidance that's required. And he has done that in a team spirit where I think the departments work much more cooperatively to provide those critical services to the city. And there's not one day that I have ever come to work and said, oh my God, I got to work for that guy again. I have said that in the past for some other city managers. We had some good city managers. But Mike has been a pleasure to work for. His interest is always the city. He knows how to manage his department heads, get the most out of them, and he does it with respect and knowledge. So again, it's really been a pleasure working for Mike. I'm certainly going to miss him. I'm going to miss his leadership, his friendship, but his personal integrity is match none. And he was someone who tells you where he stands. And that always bothered me when I had a boss that didn't tell you where they stood. It was always, you know, a duck and miss show with you if you didn't know where your boss stood. And Mike did that. And he also gave us the right constructive criticism when we, you know, did not meet expectations. So again, it was a pleasure working for Mike. I think he's done a tremendous job for this city. I just can't say enough about him. I'm delighted that he's going to stay another year, and I'll enjoy every moment that he's here. So I think the city's lucky to have Mike. And I would just add, please don't start any succession training for me yet.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to a vote. With regards to extending Mike's contract for the next year, all in favor? All opposed? Thank you. Moving on to, by the way, congratulations, Mike.
Thank you.
We'll see you for the next year. Counselor updates. Yes. I'm like, we cancel it.
Apologies. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware and knew that they are invited to the second community forum on the opioid crisis in Waterville. That's going to be here.
Do you want to wait a sec? 'Cause I think this is important for people to hear, and I don't want you to get drowned out by this sound, actually. Thank you, Counselor.
Okay.
Excuse me.
The second Waterville Community Forum on the opioid crisis will be here in the Chase Community Forum Monday in a week. That's April 29th at 6:30. I want to thank the police chief, who was one of the speakers in the first community forum in February. We had a great crowd. Over 70 people came out to hear about Project Hope, hear from Lisa Halley, Charlotte Warren, who's a representative, and then Gordon Smith, who was the opiate director for the Mills administration. This forum on the 29th is going to be focused on stigma and be a conversation with women in recovery and healthcare providers about the challenges and opportunities to find a pathway to recovery in our community and how we can come together and support people and families on that journey. So again, that's April 29th at 6:30.
Could we get that on the city Facebook and website? That'd be great.
Sure, I'd
And
be
maybe get
happy
that
to.
to Sarah. I think that'd be wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Any other counselor updates? Community notes. Community notes is time. If anybody has something they would like to say, tell us about, speak about, that is not already been spoken about tonight, now would be the time to do it. We ask you to just come to the podium, let us know your name, where you live, and what you have to say.
Sorry, Cindy Jacobs, Waterville Public Library. We are having a book sale right now. I hope you guys all come. It started last Saturday. The books are going out like
You have
water.
old books?
What, pardon me?
Those are like the best places to buy old
Oh my
books.
God, you
have
go
a
out
ton
with your
old
bags
books?
of books. So please, everybody come. It's going on through Friday. Other Waterville Library update, our sprinkler system is now in working and legal order so that we don't go to jail. That's all done. It got all done last week. I won't tell you how much it costs now. But anyway, it's done and that part of the building is safe.
When's the book sale end?
It ends on Friday at 5.
Thank you.
So hope your library goes.
Nancy Sanford, Ward 1. I just want to say that I was not at all concerned to see in the Sentinel city council members and the mayor, along with others, enjoying an after-meeting gathering at a local eatery. I realize the legal definition of a city council meeting may be different, but in my world, it is only a meeting if city business is discussed. None of the sitting members, sitting council members, or the mayor have given me any reason to believe that they would conduct Waterville city business other than at a Waterville City Council meeting. On a different note, and with the talk of the revitalization efforts that are happening in downtown Waterville, which is very exciting, and I personally am particularly excited about the Art Center, and also the opportunity to practice bowling. So maybe I will do something other than get a gutter ball at some point. But I've had the opportunity recently to talk with some folks that struggle to make ends meet. They were expressing frustration with not being able to find a reasonable priced rent downtown. I don't know the real estate market well, but I do think I am not mistaken in some memory that there were some small apartments which perhaps rented for lower prices on the upper floors of downtown buildings, which have now been sold in the revitalization of downtown Waterville. Another word for revitalization is often gentrification. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines gentrification as, quote, the process of repairing and rebuilding homes and businesses in a deteriorating area, accompanied by an influx of middle or affluent people, and that often results in the displacement of earlier, usually poorer residents. I want the revitalization of Waterville to be a good thing for all of its residents, not just those of us in the middle and upper classes. I want us all to prosper in Waterville's future. I trust that the members of the Waterville City Council want the same thing, and that we will all be mindful of including all members of our community in the future bright days of Waterville. Thanks.
Thank you as always for your thoughtful commentary. Thank you.
Ron Merrill, Ward 7, resident there for the last 45 years. Seemed to throwing out some years. I thought I'd give you mine as well.
Right.
Like the lady that's just spoken before me, I was quite upset after our last council meeting, and then a couple of days later, I had to read in the newspaper about some of the councilmen going across the street for some entertainment, watching the sporting game, and having something to eat. I find this year very refreshing as compared to last year when we were in the Stearns building, when it was quite heated, and when people left, they did not speak to one another. This year has been very good, and it's really too bad that I have to look at the paper, not on page 3, not a small article, but on the front page, where there's some pretty serious topics, but the bottom 3 has to do with resident asks for city council probe. And then it goes on page 4 for about a third of the page there. As I said, it's so refreshing to come to the council meetings this year and find the civility a lot better than it was last year. Ward 2, Phil, I'm calling you Phil because I'm afraid I might mispronounce your last name. You were in a heated discussion with the mayor this evening, but I can almost guarantee when it's over, you two will be shaking hands, unlike
We'll have some
last
pizza
year.
together.
That's right, you bet. You know it. That's right.
And you will continue on. I just do not want us to resort back to last year. No. I think it was you, Phil, and I can remember the quote. I didn't write it down, but I can remember it by heart, that you said that at the meeting, there's nothing I can do about what happened in previous years. The only thing I can do is what is happening now and in the future. And I think that is how it should be. I think 2 words I want to leave you with that I hope that the city council will keep on working with is civility and compromise. If we use these 2 words, I think we will go a long ways. And to give you a little levity, you've got a pretty good mayor here. He hasn't built a statue on the concourse for us to tear down yet. Thank you.
Hi, Julian Payne, Ward 5. I just wanted to point out, too, that I was dragged into the dragnet of your bad behavior last week, and apparently a letter was written to my superintendent and the entire school board asking for a full apology, and you can know what I said to that reply.
Never.
I'm only one school board member there. It's my concern to see who I am not or am not sitting next to at that point, so I just wanted to clarify that. After this meeting, I'm going to you-know-who's pub for a cold beer and pizza, and please don't follow me, because I don't want to be in the front page of the newspaper tomorrow. Thank you.
Making light of that, though, does not feel okay from my other city councilors, because they do know that we felt uncomfortable. So laughing about it now doesn't feel right.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
I would make,
Kathy Weeks, Ward 1. First, I would like to thank this wonderful family, Maine residents, that want to help us and have a wonderful facility over here. So thank you so much. So many of us are just cheering you all on. I think maybe you're a little crazy to be doing that, but we thank you and we support you greatly. The other thing is I had the privilege of going to a state meeting this past weekend, and I had nothing but wonderful, wonderful compliments about Mayor Isgro and what a wonderful individual and leader he is. So it was a privilege about that.
Thank you.
I also thought it was a disgrace that the Sentinel would put in about the beer and the pizza. So, Thank you for just holding still, so.
Thank you. Manager's report.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to.
Oh, sorry, Phil.
So I just wanted to make a little comment about the incident that was reported in the Morning Sentinel, and I just want the councilors to know that we don't. Personally, I don't take light. You know, I would never try to. We would never try to dismiss somebody from having concern and expressing them. You know, and we also want everybody to know that. I'm pretty sure everybody here on this council would welcome any investigation, but the bottom line would have been that nothing would have been found at all. And we're not dismissing, you know, somebody's perception of what could have happened. I just want them to know that really there was no city business being discussed there, and we were there for basically 5 minutes before all that happened. It didn't look good in the sense that there was 4 of us, but I can agree. I can assure everybody.
Nobody planned on going there together.
Yeah.
People came in. There was a lot of people there. People from the public. A radical leftist activist came over and put a video camera on us and got kicked out of the place. So that's it. We're going to move on to the manager's report. Thank you.
I'm good.
No.
Wait. Oh, Mike, we have people here. We have Ashley. We're not going to dismiss.
Well, and just before we get on to the next item.
No, we're on manager's report.
Yeah, Mike, put the grant.
Oh.
Mike, can we just cover that item really quick before she gets started?
Sure. She's got to get ready anyway.
Sydney, you're in charge for the next 2 minutes.
Mike, do you want me to deal with it, or do you want to?
I'll let you do it.
Okay, so just so the council is aware, we've been approached by Todd Martin, who's on the Solid Waste Committee. There's apparently a grant opportunity that Todd would like to put an application in for, which is actually due next Friday. And so there won't be time for the city to formally endorse the grant application. But essentially, it is a grant. What's the amount, Mike? Was it $12,000?
I believe so.
And there's no match from the city, and the grant, if we were awarded it, would be to work to divert organic waste from the solid waste system. And the idea that we're batting around right now, which was Todd's idea, which I'm not sure is where we'll settle, would be purchasing some backyard composting bins to hand out to residents of the city, along with some other possible uses. So we just wanted, before we actually put the application in, we wanted to at least get an informal okay from the city council, because we'll be required to accept the funds if we get them, and it obviously would not look good if we were to get a grant and say no to it. So.
Right, and this inception was from the Solid Waste Committee, which was part of a discussion as well, and it was well-received and formalized as far as we do support that as a committee. So the rest of you are okay with it. I think it's going after this grant money is being just common sense.
Given that it was endorsed by the committee and it's bringing resources into the city, it definitely seems like something we would want to support.
I don't see why not. It's free money. It goes to a good cause. Let's make it work.
So I think that's an okay, Mike.
It's an okay?
Yes,
All right,
I
the
believe so,
consensus is, yeah. I mean, if there was some problems later, we wouldn't have to accept the grant, but why not take a shot at it?
Correct.
And Todd's willing to do all the work, so.
Done deal.
Which is even better.
Which is even better. So, under manager's report, it's Ashley Pullen. She's going to be talking about the Waterville Community Land Trust. Hopefully we can help her out technically here.
Yeah, we got
There
it.
we go.
Yeah.
All right. You
All
gonna
right.
cooperate from
Yeah, I think,
Do I have to get?
yeah, there we go. Okay, got it. So I know it's late, so I just want to thank people in advance for your continued attention. There's been a lot of conversation tonight about downtown revitalization. There's also been conversation about gentrification, and I think, you know, that concern is really a perfect segue into the work of the Waterville Community Land Trust. For those who are not familiar with community land trusts, they generally focus on affordable home ownership and other, other community assets, sometimes like gardens and community centers and trails. There are over 260 community land trusts across the country. And again, I know I'm rushing apologetically, but in the interest of time, community land trust home ownership is a little different from a traditional home ownership. Community land trusts buy homes and they sell them at affordable prices, which are generally slightly below market value to income qualified families, which are usually at about 50 to 80% of area median income. And the homeowner owns the home, and the community land trust retains ownership of the land. So if you have trouble wrapping your head around that, think of it sort of like a condo. And the key piece, though, of a community land trust is that homes are kept affordable perpetually, because if the homeowner decides to sell, there are provisions that it be resold at an affordable price to another income qualified buyer. And the community land trust retains ownership of the land as well. So in terms of, in general, why community land trusts, certainly there's the piece around this, American dream of owning a home. I think especially here in Waterville, it's really important. I worked in the schools here for many years. I know that cycle of poverty can be very deep and hard to dig yourself out of. And so being able to gain equity in a home can really be a change maker for a family. I also think it's important in terms of, we also, on our board, believe it's important in terms of neighborhood stability. Having homeowners in a neighborhood really helps with the stability piece. And then again, making homes affordable in perpetuity, really the benefit to the community is not just a one-time benefit, it's a benefit long into the future. So specifically, Waterville Community Land Trust, we were established in 2014 as a nonprofit community land trust. Our initial focus is on the south end, and specifically on the south part of the south end. But we hope that eventually we will be like the greater Waterville Community Land Trust and be working not just in Waterville, but in the surrounding areas. Our board is a tripartite, which is a typical thing with community land trusts. And so we have 1/3 general members. We have 1/3 members from the South End, and ideally, hopefully in the future, from residents of our properties. And then 1/3 are experts in terms of housing and the nonprofit world and community planning. And we are all still volunteers. So we all just, put in our blood, sweat, and tears because we care about Waterville. So in terms of the work that we've done so far, this is our first home at 181 Water Street, and that's our first homeowner, Anna Holdener. Some of you may know her from her work at the South End Teen Center and KV Cap. We also currently own 226 Water Street, which used to have 2 houses on it. They were not in any shape to be rehabbed, so we raised them with help from the city and the South End Fund. And we plan to turn most of the land into a riverfront park. The plan for our park, the rough plan for our park is up there. You can see there are, or maybe you can't, so I can tell you, there are, gardens, raised bed gardens, handicap accessible raised bed gardens, a boardwalk down to the river. And we specifically are looking to put in those handicap accessible raised bed gardens because through talking with the Muskie Center and Spectrum Generations, we've been told there's a need for handicap accessible garden beds in the city. So we're looking to do that. There is a parcel on the right we will potentially reserve to build a new house. But we really would prefer to renovate if we can acquire another home soon in our target area in the south part of the South End. So it's very much our preference. In terms of across the country, how cities and community land trusts have partnered, Champlain Housing Trust in Burlington was established with funds, financial support from the city of Burlington. They're one of the largest and most successful now. Delray Beach, Albuquerque, Syracuse, they all are large cities that have successful land trusts that were given city-owned properties to be turned into different sorts of spaces and city-owned land. And then in DC, the city council in DC actually committed $10 million in public funds to subsidize the first 1,000 units of a resale restricted owner-occupied housing development. And the image there is from a report on the city. It's out by the Lincoln Institute. It's on municipal support for community land trusts. And the two key reasons they cite for cities taking an interest in community land trusts are the long-term preservation of housing subsidies and also the long-term stewardship of housing. So here in Waterville, certainly through our work, we are, there certainly is plenty of opportunity. When you look beyond downtown, we have, a dearth of quality affordable housing, as you spoke to. Certainly we are not looking to get $10 million from the city to support our work like the DC council was able to give, but, there are ways that we both can support each other. The creation of green spaces in our future park at 226 Water Street supports the South End Comprehensive Plan and the call for more open space that is in that plan certainly makes our neighborhoods more welcoming and inviting. But the math up here too, I want to make sure people are well aware of that. When we purchased 181 Water Street, it was assessed at around $30,000, which is going to bring in about $750 a year of tax income. After the renovations that we did, which certainly cost us much more than $30,000, but it's now assessed at almost twice the price, and so that means almost twice the tax income for the city. And just to kind of show that in a different way, this is a chart that shows the assessments of homes on King, Hald, Water, Gold, and Gray streets. And it's broken out by the value of the home. So you'll see the blue, that's the largest. Those are homes that are valued at around 30 to 39, or assessed at 30 to 39,000. That's where 181 Water Street was before our work. And then if you look over to the other side where the red star is, right, kind of on the bubble between 50,000 to 59,000 and 60,000 to 69,000. We certainly have far fewer properties in that area right now that are at that value. But through our work, we have been able to move that property and nearly double the assessment. So opportunities that are out there, I'm coming close to my close, I promise. Some opportunities that are out there, we certainly could use composted leaves, wood chips, landscape timbers for our park. That's, on a smaller scale. On a bigger scale, obviously donations of tax-acquired properties in our target area would certainly be welcomed. We also have had representation in the past on our board from Ward 6 or Ward 7, and we would love to continue that tradition as well. So certainly, I know it's late and I don't want to let people go, but we are, as I said, an all-volunteer board. We are here for the benefit of the city, and we know there's been, I think the council is almost all new since we were reported officially to the council about 5 years ago, and they're just we as an all-volunteer board are, I certainly am proud of what we are accomplishing, but we can accomplish a lot more in partnership with the city as well. So. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take those, or if we want to call it a night, I'm happy to do that too.
What kind of help are you looking for the city?
Yeah, so back to that specifically, we could use things for our park, like composted leaves, wood chips, landscape timbers. We could use, tax-acquired properties. We would love to be, to apply for a CDBG grant in the future. And so we've had a few conversations with different folks in this room and outside of this room about that in the future. Other land trusts do that. And certainly any support in our advocacy, we're really trying to advocate at the state level right now. There are federal funds, housing funds that come into the state that right now are mostly earmarked for rental. And we really would love to have those opened up to be also usable for community land trusts for homeownership. There's a few other community land trusts in the state as well, and we're kind of trying to band together on that front. Yeah.
For tax-acquired properties, Ashley, is it mostly in the south end?
For now, right now, because we are trying to cluster our work so that it has a kind of a more visible impact, but eventually, hopefully, wider.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just thinking if I would happen, but, yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You're trying to really raise the whole neighborhood, which is commendable. This was actually beneficial to me, and I know I've kind of been around since you guys started, but it's nice to have a refresher. I was watching a thing the other night on Cleveland and how they're trying to look at doing things like this, and it's important work.
It's community land trusts have done amazing. It's homeownership is the heart of it, but then parks and gardens, and you look across the country, and people are doing amazing things, and we're really, really fortunate, I think, to be kind of at the start of the growth of community land trust here in Maine. So. Any other questions?
If anybody can get a hold of you, we have contact information.
We have a website, so probably just Waterville Community, or if you Google Waterville Community Land Trust, we're there. So it's probably the best way to get a hold of us.
and of course Scott's involved too.
Yes.
Yep, so is Nancy.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.